Welcome back. So we made it through a portion of the book. I'm going to head on to LPGA 1. So this sheet says to insert a function that will return the words under par if the player's total score is 215 or less. Otherwise, we're going to return par or over. All right, so this is a function, and this sounds like an if function. All right, there's one of two outcomes. It's either under or it's over. So to pay attention here is total score 215 or less, right? So let's go put this guy together. So I'm going to start in cell K3, and I'm going to go to the Formulas tab. Logical if, right? That's just where it is. And so the condition, this is a single cell formula, so I am going to look at total score, which is I3, and if it's less than or equal to 215, right, because that's what the question said, then I'm going to say under par. Otherwise, I'm going to say par or over. All right, notice that once I click or tab to another cell, I get the quotes around it, so I didn't need to put those in there. That should work. I click OK. Now this is where I can show you a nice little trick. If I want to fill handle this all the way down, I can click and drag, or you can just double click on the fill handle, complete the entire column, and you can see that it breaks right here, and that looks about right. So on to the next sheet. LPGA 2. Insert a function that will return the word even if the player's score was E in today's round. Otherwise, return not even. All right, this sounds like an if function again. One outcome or another. So I'm going to head up to starting cell K3. So I got to know where this function is. It's logical if. And so I am looking at today's round, which is in cell D3. And I'm going to say if that is equal to E, all right, that's how I have to do this one, right? There's a bunch of ways you could set it up, but equal to the literal value E, then I say even. Otherwise, not even. With all of these functions, these binary functions where it's either true or false, there's a million ways you could set it up. That's how I set it up. Let's do OK. Seems to work there, but is it going to work all the way down? Well, I scan down and I look at row 13, and that's the first even, and it seems to have worked. All right, so this one's set up quite a bit differently. We're looking for a literal match. Essentially, we're looking for a string, and a string must be wrapped in quotes. In the question, that is why there is quotes around the E. Next sheet, we're making good time right now. Notice this is not a substitute for understanding what you're doing. This is just a solution video. Insert a function in the yellow cell above that will return the average total score for players who scored under par, which is less than 72 in round 1. So you don't need to know anything about golf. There's your criteria. So function, we're doing the average total score for under 72 in round 1. Well, that sounds like an average function, and it is, but there's also a condition, which makes it an average if. So we need to know where to find our average if. So average if lives in more functions, which is kind of misleading. Statistical average if. Now, some students like to use average ifs, and I actually do prefer that dialog box, but just in the spirit of the problem, I'm going to do an average if. And I'm going to use the dialog box, which I don't have to, but I will. So here's where they start getting more difficult, honestly, right? You've got range and you've got average range. Two different ranges, and I've got a criteria. The criteria is pretty straightforward. The criteria is going to be less than 72. Notice how different this is than an if function. Right, my criteria is here, and the cells I want evaluated are in a different field, which is kind of weird. Now, the criteria is less than 72 in round 1. So round 1, right here, so column F, is my, that's the range that I want evaluated, and I want the average of the total score. Right? You can see that right here, average total score, so average total score. And enter, and I get an answer of about 208.73, right? I'm sure it's right. Next sheet. You might be wondering, is there a good way to check your answers? At this point, there is not. I would recommend pivot charts, pivot tables are good ways to validate your data, but we're not there yet. Insert a function in the yellow cell above that will sum the winnings for all players who scored less than par which is 72 in round 3. All right, so this sounds like a sum function, and it is, but there's a condition, so it's a SumIf. So we're looking at less than 72 in round 3. I'm going to go more functions, statistical, AverageIf. So the range that I want evaluated, in other words, the determining column here is round 3, right? This is whether I want to pay attention to these people or not. I only care if they're less than 72, and I want the average of the winnings. And I press enter because I'm done, and I get a number that seems to be just south of 25,000. Notice the formatting's pretty ugly for a numeric value. I'm not worried about formatting that, right? If I asked you to format it, then you'd worry about it, right? You'd head over to the Home tab and switch it over to accounting. That was a mistake. Right? Fine. But I didn't ask you to do that, so don't worry about it. On to LPGA 5. Insert a function in the yellow cell above that will count the number of players who are under par in today's round. Right? So that sounds like a CountIf. Right? If you've got a count and there's a condition, and we only care about today's round, I'm going to click in cell A82. And the tough thing about this problem kind of is you can't tell what column is what, so you really do have to scroll up. Today's round is right here. So I'm going to select, oops, sorry, I got ahead of myself. I've got to put the function in there first. So formulas, more functions, CountIf. This is an easier dialog box. It just is, right? It's only got 2 text boxes instead of 3. We're doing number of players under par in today's round. Here's today. Oh, get out of here. And I want under par. Notice there's some E's in there. Well, how is an E going to get evaluated if I say less than 0, which is what that means. So under par. I don't know what an E is really as a number, but I can tell you that it's not less than 0, and that works. There are 42 scores that were under par. That was my first pause ever, so we'll see how that turns out. At this point, I'm going to have to scroll over in my workbook, and I guess this is a skill. This is scroll over one sheet. This is scroll to the end. I'm just going to go a couple sheets, and I'm going to try and get to 10 minutes here. Let's go LPGA 6. Insert a function in the yellow cell above that will average the winnings for every player with a total score less than or equal to 216. So total score less than or equal to 216, average winnings. Those are the key words. This sounds like an AverageIf, right? Because I want the average of certain people. So I'm going to head over to more functions, statistical AverageIf. So my criteria is players with total scores less than 216. So I set that up. Less than or equal to 216, I believe. Right, less than or equal. And I want the average of winnings. Can't help but think of Charlie Sheen every time I say winnings. So I get a number, something like 22,000. And look, I could make a mistake on any one of these, and go ahead and leave me a comment if I do. It wouldn't be the first time. But I think those are right. Insert a 3. So now we're done with the AverageIf, SumIfs, the if class of functions, which are very important, and we're on to charts. So there's only 3 of these. I skipped chart 2. No, that's not a trick. I just didn't like the question, so I threw it away. So insert a 3D pie chart below that will represent the totals for each item. Right? So you really got to read these. Obviously, it's a pie chart. So totals for each item. Right? Items. These are my items. So something like this. Notice I selected non-adjacent ranges of data. I select a range. Now I press Control. Now I drag around the other part. And if I were to go Insert, Pie Chart, 3D Pie Chart, that's pretty much what it was asking for. I could do a little bit to improve that. This is not a great chart, but it is readable. I didn't ask for anything more, nor would I expect anything more. You could grab the headings, and it's probably a good idea to do that, generally speaking. But right, all this is going to do is put a title on it. It's not that much better. Data labels would be a perfectly reasonable thing to put on this, but we're not. So that's what that should look like. Let's get one more chart in here, and then I'll call it good. So insert a 3D column chart that represents the January, March, and May figures for each item. So January, March, May. All right, so completely non-adjacent data. This is good. So I'm going to select January. Notice I do not get totals. That would be wrong. March and May. And this is not going to hack it right now. I need the labels, which is item types. You always got to select the labels, right? I've seen people try and do some really weird stuff, like trying to put them in manually. That's not what you want to do. Column chart, 3D column chart. I don't really care which one. Notice this is a readable graph. I've got a legend that makes sense. My labels are correct. I don't have totals skewing it at the end. And on that note, we're going to break, and I will come back with another video, and we'll see if I can't finish it up in the next one. That would be pretty good. Thanks for watching.